Good morning, everyone. Hi, friends. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you are here, that I am here, that we have all made it this far. So welcome to the Daily Medicine Transmission for October 13th, 2021. I thought maybe we could talk about, obviously, today and today's astrology. But since there won't be a transmission tomorrow morning, we can go over tomorrow's astrology as well and kind of just put it together in a neat little package. So welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for participating in your own journey of being a human being at this unprecedented time in our history on this planet. So there's just not enough Palo Santo in the world, I feel like it sometimes, to really draw in that which we want to invite in. So Palo Santo doesn't function like sage does. It doesn't clear energy. It actually invites in because it's got this sweet resiny smell to it, because it's a wood, right? It's an actual piece of dried wood. So when you burn it, it's not clearing the energy as much as inviting in that which we want to invite in. And boy, is that a personal choice. Is that a personal choice or not? Wow. So welcome back. And if you're new to this channel, regardless of what platform you're finding yourself on, thank you for stopping by and welcome. It's so great to have you here. So I hope everyone is doing well. It does feel like that things have tapered off. You know, the solar weather has tapered off. There is some balance and some quiet for the time being. So the solar wind speed has dropped and the density has dropped. And even last night, if you had seen it, it was, if you're tracking the magnetosphere, the density and the pressure and the velocity, if you saw it last night, you know, it was incredibly dense. That whole area around the planet was just blue, right? The just density of it was substantial, and the pressure, of course, was substantial as well. We had our first quarter square of the sun and moon yesterday. You know, it does. Oh boy, it's not an easy thing to really align yourself and to, sustain yourself, find your own brilliance and expression, with all of us coming together, and realizing the necessity that we all have to participate at the same time, and what that means. When you see, instances in your actual life of people who are seemingly diametrically opposed to what you believe is fundamental human rights, freedom, liberty, these types of things. And it's not easy, right? This is very challenging. If it was easy, we wouldn't even be in this situation right now. It is the difficulty that goes along with finding the common ground and the common resonance with people in our everyday lives, in the world that we live in the communities that we live in. It's not easy. It's very actually challenging to find a place where everybody is aligned with the same frequency and resonance. And we're going to find that in today's transmission, especially the intuitive aspect. This is the work that we absolutely still need to do. And we may have to take ourselves out counterintuitively or paradoxically. We'll have to take ourselves out of the outward, communicative and interfacing with, specifically interfacing with the larger social context that's being presented to us, in order to really come to understand who we are and where we belong and know what our resonance is so that we can align appropriately. But it's not easy. It's not easy to be all in the same house with all kinds of different people, and realizing that those that you're sharing space with have a completely different view of, not only view of reality, but their what they are choosing to align with and who they're choosing to align with, and what they're going to act how they're going to act, I should say, as a result of that. It's not easy, but we're here all together on this planet still, right? If you're still here, you are still here. And our job as specifically as starseeds is, and the indigos too, I had a really great interaction on Facebook about this. Some just so insightful comments, and everybody really thinking at this level here that it's really our job as the starseeds. And if you identify as an indigo, which means you have much more of the warrior type of spirit, and I can link to some definitions if you're really confused about these types of things in the social media realm if you're interested. But the comment that came through was how many of us that have come to realize our role and our mission, our very specific mission for being here, we've learned how to deconstruct and deprogram ourselves over the course of our lifetime as a result of the experiences that we've had. And it leads us to a place now where we can hold an example, hold a model, and guide people and facilitate people from the process of their own deprogramming. And it's what I've gotten from the last couple of days is it's very tempting. And it may be necessary to a certain extent to just be like, forget it. You're on your own, right? Like, I've done all that I can to model this particular behavior, to suggest maybe a different or alternative viewpoint. The fact that we may even be programmed, and the level of deception is so deep and so thick that, and we've talked about this before, and I do mean to post the link to the pitfalls of the spiritual path, because I really feel like that even decades ago when Ram Dass was talking about it makes so much sense right now. Our way of dissociating from the continuous trauma loop that is, foisted upon us through various means, through social media and through any kind of mainstream media outlet, any interaction through entertainment, any of it. The dissociation can sometimes feel like we are in a spiritual practice. And this is something that I've had to really, really take some time to unpack for myself. And I really urge you to do the same, because it's important to realize that it's not about what allows us to feel good, but what allows us to be true and authentic in the moment. And sometimes that's very painful, and sometimes it's very difficult. And sometimes those difficult and painful situations that seem to throw us out of the crow's nest really were a blessing, so that we don't go down with the ship. But we still, it's an interesting and very it's a very confusing time. It's very weird. I'm not going to lie. Like, I find it weird, and we're all figuring this out together as we go along. And some people are exposed to information, exposed to experiences that other people aren't. And so we have so much to learn from those people and those situations. Those are called whistleblowers. And because when you're a whistleblower, it's because you've been on the inside of some sort of institution or organization that you realize has been, in fact, deceiving people or doing nefarious things. And you are like, hello, this is not okay. So there's so much to learn right now. And the temptation is to just put your head back in the sand and be like, I'll pull it back out when we're at 5D. And that's not how it works, especially if you are a starseed. Like, that's not the mission, right? And that's your choice. You can have a choice to do that. And that's for you to decide. That is free will, and that is the law of this universe. But our mission here is to be the holding and anchoring that resonance steady for ourselves and for other people in order to make the transition, right? We are straddling between these two-dimensional aspects, and the tendency, and I know I keep talking about this, but it's because it's important. And it's important because we need to be able to understand these things so that we can really relate to other people and where they're coming from and why they make the decisions they do, so we can cultivate compassion. Because for the the most part, I mean, with the exception of a very, very, very small fraction of people on this planet, most people are really trying to do the best that they can with what they have, or they've, in some cases, they've totally lost touch with reality, and then they make decisions to do horrendous things. But that's not who I'm talking about. I mean, we're talking about the average person who's making decisions based on their perceptual framework. And when you don't realize that your perceptual framework is consistently being altered and massaged and programmed, even now, I mean, the more you spend any time on social media, it's certainly being programmed. Your alternative news, it's still programming you, right? And it's important that we realize this so that we can actually be compassionate, and we can know who we align with, and we can understand how that we can start aligning with each other, and what techniques, what types of interactions are really going to foster that. Because it's very clear that at least from my own journey and what I'm experiencing, the temptation to just be like, I'm out, like, good luck. I know where I stand. And that's okay. But that's not our job. And that's, I'm not saying that we can force anything to happen. So, or make anybody do anything. That's the complete antithesis of what this is all about. But we can stand in our authenticity and truth, and be, out there with it, right? To be out there with it. So there's a couple things that there's a couple things I want to share before we get into the transmission part. Number one, there's just a couple dots that I want to connect. If you may connect for yourself. If you're familiar with the story of the Wicker Man, if you've seen the original movie, and my God, if you've seen the remake with Nicolas Cage, oh my God. I don't know, familiarize yourself with that concept. I think that's something that's worth considering, that we have eclipse season coming up, and, let's go, Brandon, right? I think Brandon may be our Wicker Man, and that's something to really consider, and not get drawn into that aspect, right? And that's going to be a big one. If and when the Wicker Man, Brandon is the Wicker Man, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, then just, let's go, Brandon. If Brandon is the Wicker Man, if and when, especially around eclipse season, to be careful not to get pulled into it, right? To get pulled into the drama of it. Do not give your very precious attention and energy and vibration over to what the Wicker Man represents. So it's just something to consider. And then I wanted to share actually this little clip. So if you follow Suspicious Observers, the next installment of the disaster cycle, it was pretty technical. I mean, you really do have to, if that was your first time listening to it, it's and you don't have a background in cosmology or astrophysics, it may be a little bit much. So you have to go back and listen to the disaster cycle playlist and those videos, because it'll really give you the introduction and the platform to stand on, so you can understand the update. But it was pretty technical, but it also was very in the last how many months or so, there's been so much research that has been released that has really confirmed a lot of the science about the magnetic excursion, which is not a reversal. I feel like it's important to speak to that. It's not a reversal. It's not a full reversal. I see stuff on YouTube all the time that it's got thousands and tens of thousands of views about magnetic reversals. It's not a reversal. It is a shift. It's definitely going to be a 90-degree shift, when it happens. And solar forcing of the climate and blah, blah, blah. So things are moving along in that territory. So if you do want to check that out, just know that you may want to get yourself primed for it in terms of the language, because he really goes through a lot of it in a very direct way. So I'm going to check in with the chat real quick. Finding the demons, negative energy of others somehow is more of a challenge than fighting my own demons. What a bizarre world in this moment. Man, that is so insightful. And I will tell you what, that is exactly That is exactly so I do a lot of work in the astral in sleep time, as most of us do, right? If you really start unpacking your dreams and really doing lucid dreaming, things like that, you'll find that you're getting a lot more direct information, especially right to your subconscious. And the last couple days, or I should say nights of dreaming and sleep, that has definitely been the theme, is just like other people, not so much me. Not to say that we shouldn't always be addressing this, because this comes into effect with us when we start interfacing or interacting, or even just being in the presence of other people and their demons and possessions or whatever, their shadow not being acknowledged. It can really bring out aspects of our shadow that we've previously not acknowledged. And so ultimately, and we're going to see this in the transmission, how much this is going to come back around to another round of kind of going within and really separating ourselves for the time being from the fray, as it were, in order to really get clear with ourselves again. Because it's a process, right? Just like the oscillation and the wave function. There's contraction and release. There's outward and there's inward. And so even our own process, right? Nobody is ever going to truly find that place of enlightenment forever and ever. Not unless you're like living in a cave for most of your life. If you're coming out in service to humanity, then just, it's a dance all the time. So I really appreciate that insight, because that really fits in a lot to what's going on right now for many people. So I do want to share, this is just a blurb, okay? This is just a blurb that I thought was interesting. So I'm going to turn on the desktop audio, and then I'm going to turn off my mic, and it's just like, 30 seconds maybe.
Let's go to a space mystery. They have discovered a mysterious polarized radio signature from near the galactic center, and they have absolutely no idea what it could be. It's showing up with the weirdest frequency in the pattern, and there is utterly no visual counterpart. Its signature doesn't match any known type of star or even a theoretical object they could concoct right now. The options are everything from a new energetic paradigm event at the galactic level to aliens trying to say hello. Up next, we're at Nova Events. Good morning, folks. Hopefully you saw the
Okay, sorry about I'm trying to get there we go. All right, guys. Yes, so that was just a blurb about like there's some sort of frequency, unknown frequency coming out of the galactic center right now that scientists and cosmologists have no idea what it is. And it's totally unique, and it has nothing to base it on, coming out of the galactic center. Oh, that's so fascinating. I wonder what that is. All right. So let's get into the reading for today so we can see what we are working with in the energy here, and really get a handle on the archetypes we are working with and the symbols that represent our human experience through the tarot. So I really find, this is a total aside. So the Thoth deck, if you're not familiar with the Thoth deck, so Thoth is the god of wisdom and communication. He's kind of got the same stance, or has the same, it's like the same archetype as Hermes or Mercury, but it's in Egyptian in Egyptian cosmology and in their pantheon of deities, right? So the Thoth deck the Thoth deck was created by Aleister Crowley. So I don't need to go into too much about Crowley, but there is something supremely satisfying to me to use his deck to completely undermine what his goal was in life. See, this is how you can use their own tools against them, right? You can use their own tools like astrology and tarot and the Kabbalah and all of their they don't own any of this stuff. This is natural. This is a natural phenomenon. language being developed in the human brain is directly connected to symbolic frequency and pattern frequency and archetypal frequency, right? These are natural developments in the human brain. Astrology is nothing more than the tracking of cycles. It's a giant cosmological clock, right? And being able to measure the energetic and vibrational connections to all of these different aspects coming together, right? This is, maybe this is my little demon, but there's many. But I do gather a supreme amount of pleasure by using Aleister Crowley's Thoth deck to undermine the power structure that he actually was part of bringing into the world, right? The Illuminati. So that's one way you can do it. So that's why I don't, people freak out about the use of these tools as if they are somehow invented by the devil or Satan. And they're just extensions of the natural human condition used against the humans, for centuries, millennia. So I gather a lot of personal pleasure. Speaking of pleasure, here we are, the Six of Cups. What an interesting segue. So the Six of Cups is considered pleasure. It's the sun in the second decan, the second 10 degrees of Scorpio. Now, when it came out, it was definitely pointed away. So what we see here is that certainly our causal factor is this harmony after a very deep pain, but it's got reverberations that are further back, right? And not really necessarily in this present moment, but something that maybe we can connect to from further back, a moment where we came through an incredible trial of emotional pain and realization to come out the other side with some measure of harmony. Number 6 in numerology is going to combine the contrasts and reconcile the opposites, right? This is a very alchemical type of number, right? The 6th house is the same thing in astrology, the 6th house, which is, by the way, the house of the hermit. This is where you reconcile the opposites of you. This is where you combine the contrasts within you, right? This is Mercury actually bringing the duality aspect of Gemini into the humble service and embodied in a human form. So the 6 is open to all directions. So deep emotions, when we're talking about the cups, we're talking about emotions, deep emotions that pass through the depth of pain and fear. And now we can return to the inner source of that harmony and enjoy that devotion and that harmony and be open to where we go from here. So this is something that we can reflect on. We can certainly reconnect to it, but it's something that's not as accessible. And it's something that in some ways, I don't want to say we should leave it in the past, but the direction that it's facing says a lot, that it is not part of our necessarily immediate experience, but something that we can connect to that has happened before. Another situation where we have realized something as a result of passing through this really deep pain and fear and disappointment, right? The 5 of Cups is that disappointment. And so, and very deep disappointment, very painful disappointment. And so we can take something that this represents for us in a very past experience. It could be very much related to the immediate past, but this is suggesting that for those of us who have been going through this process over and over in our lives in order to prepare us now, we may want to reflect back on a time in our lives where we learned something very important and found a sense of peace and harmony after going through the dark night of the soul, right? Because that's really what we're coming out of, is not pleasure in the sense of like the 5th house where we're enjoying ourselves and enjoying our playful creativity and brilliance. That's certainly pleasurable as well, but this pleasure is more about coming through the dark night of the soul and really coming to have that almost spiritual experience of reaching the beloved again, through the recognition of that deep pain and fear and the dark night of the soul, which the Five of Cups really, it understates it when it says disappointment on the card, which is kind of interesting considering how dramatic Aleister Crowley really was, with all of, I'm sure he had a lot of Leo in his chart, that it's disappointment kind of understates in some ways the intensity of that dark night of the soul type of experience. But we can reflect on that. We can take ourselves back to that situation, not to relive the trauma, to be like, oh, I remember that. I remember when I passed through this time frame and then what it felt like to come out of it and be a whole new realization about ourselves and about our relationships and about our relationship to the world and our relationship to source or to God, and returning to the inner source. That's a big part of it too, because we realize at that moment that everything we've always needed was already within us. We had to go through this loss and pain and disappointment in order to realize that. So as we come into the present moment now, we are seeing that we're in the hermit phase now. And this is number 9. So we know there's a culmination. We have a 6 and then a 9. And so the hermit is the Virgo. It is related to the Virgo sign, and it is the 6th house work, right? Because you see in this card that this individual, the hermit, right, is going into the depths of self and pulling the light out as a result of going into the underworld of the self. So you see the cosmic egg with the snake around it. You see the 3-headed dog of Cerberus. So now we have a 3, 6, and a 9, which is in fact like the calling card of the universe in some ways, right? According to Tesla. Oops, let me do this here. There we go. So this is a time to start going into that inner reflection again, because I think that we're finding ourselves maybe butting heads, perhaps getting very confused. There are a lot of wins in some ways, and people are really finding themselves as well and digging deep down to find the courage to do what they know is right for themselves. And that's and trusting, right? I hear it all of these whistleblowers, people that are leaving behind their careers and leaving behind lots of different institutional things. And now that Pluto's direct, come on now, this is where it's coming in, is that the destruction of that which we have stood upon, that has given us a sense of security and boundaries and institutional reality, now is actively, and it's our power of transformation that Pluto represents. So, and we'll get to that, because that's part of where this all ends up, or the expected outcome of this particular narrative that we're looking at. But in the heart of it, right, it's about going back in and doing the inner reflection. And this also represents Saturn in Aquarius in terms of the search for wisdom. And we also know that Saturn is direct in Aquarius now as well. So, and the cosmic egg is busting open. Whatever is in there is making its way out. And so we want to be able to be very clear with ourselves what that represents for us. And so it does require some sort of retirement from the outside world. Now, this could literally mean like walking away from your job or your career, or pulling your kids out of school, for instance, or whatever it is that you're making this massive change. But it does, and on a larger scale, the choice to stop participating in some of these outer institutions that we have been participating in for so long. But this also represents the introversion that allows us to listen to our inner voice. We can't listen to our inner voice when we are continued to be bombarded with signals and programs and the AI from social media that absolutely is learning at a quantum level about us based on every interaction that we are having on our phones, on the internet, whatever. So there's something to be said for this retirement from that as well, because how are we going to know ourselves unless we search for wisdom within ourselves? So this is a very strong, it's a strong indication right now, especially with the moon in Capricorn and coming into Aquarius today. It's been, we've really had it in our subconscious, the realm of the social organism and the culture in as a whole, and what it means to be part of it. And based on what we may be feeling, and interacting with and interfacing with on a intuitive or subconscious level, we may really feel this need to pull away, in order to really listen to our inner voice, our inner light, develop some mental maturity, but also too to just to get a sense of what we're going to do next, or where we actually are. Because it's as we continue to interface out there, keep in mind that, a lot of what we see, even if it aligns with our value system, or seemingly aligns with our value system, definitely can instigate or trigger, like a trauma loop. And this was part of the conversation that I had with Barbara on Facebook today, yesterday and today, these really amazing comments about it. About this process of the trauma loop, and how that keeps us from really going into ourselves and listening to our own inner voice. And that inner voice can be conditioned by this consistent trauma loop. So it's so important that we are able to really get deeply in and not be afraid to look at what's coming through in these subconscious ways, through our dreams, through our daydreams, through synchronicities. It's important that we take the time to do that and to go deeper and deeper, so that we can, to peel back the layers. So yeah, we have some work ahead of us, but I do feel like too that things have really, for the moment, there is this kind of stillness that's allowing this to happen. So, and a moon in Aquarius is definitely a good time to do that, because you're not really feeling necessarily, you're not feeling the reverberations as much of your own emotional state, as much as you are really tapping into the collective organism. And so again, dealing with other people's stuff is very much part of this moon in Capricorn and in Aquarius. Especially in Aquarius, and in Pisces, it's going to be even more so by the weekend. But in this moment, in these next 2 days, we have this opportunity to really reflect inner and not in an inner way, right? And not get emotionally entangled in it, but to use the energy of that emotional power that runs through the social organism as a way to see the whole thing, right? But that requires that we kind of separate our emotional attachment. And this is what the Hermit's really helpful for right now. So when it comes to here's our adsum, right? Now it's back, now it's in. It came from a guidance point, and now it's definitely in our subconscious realm. This is where we draw our power from. Again, I am here. I am attended to. We are surrounded. And this is going to be a big theme for the full moon on the 20th, right? When we really sustain ourselves and express ourselves through the realization that we're surrounded by all kinds of forces. Don't get me wrong. It's not like, there's no such thing as, in my opinion, there's no such thing as demons or those false light type of archetypes. They're definitely part of the process as well, but just as much is that there's a lot that is rooting for us and supporting us and giving, God has his symbolism too. And I don't mean to gender God, because it's ridiculous, but it just comes out because we're all so conditioned, right? God, goddess, whatever. God as the creator, the creator, infinite creative source that is genderless, or all genders, right? God has symbolism as well, right? And has agents of support and comfort and all of these things too. So we are attended to, and we are tending to each other. That's the other thing. And this also brings us back to being present in the now moment as well, right? Is the idea that you are here for yourself and that you are present. And so we can draw our power here, and that we are here for each other. Again, it's not just spiritual forces, but us a spiritual community, as a community, a neighborhood, a clan, a tribe, anything like that. We're here for each other, and we're going to see here the guidance that is really bringing it to a collective focus. And again, with the moon in Aquarius right now, this is a time to really be focusing on the social organism as a whole and what that means and what our role within that actually feels like. Now, so I am here, add some, and that's number 22, right? That's a master number. That is the 1111, right? The two aspects together, the karmic contract with the higher self coming to fruition here. So when we look at here's the lookout, number 17. Oh boy. Now, the fact that this is reversed in this position right now is showing us that it's really going back to what we experienced yesterday and in terms of this position of the reading, right? The fact that there's a potential for a fall or a lost position, or a sudden difficult loss. Like, this is all stuff that people are dealing with in so many ways, and we're all dealing with it in some way. Like, nobody's getting away from having something like this touch their lives. Even if it's leaving a job or career behind, taking your children out of school, that they taking them away from the social life that they really want, but is really very detrimental for them. Maybe you are moving away. Maybe you literally have loss of people in your life. And I'm not suggesting, it could be death. That's certainly been something I've experienced in the very near past. And also loss of people based on their political views and their social views and what they think is right. And this is very difficult. And so there's lots of ways that we are falling out of the crow's nest, right? The lookout is the person represents looking out and seeing, again, the whole social organism and where it's going, right? Because 17 is very much connected to the star. The star is the Aquarian card. So it's about looking at the whole organism and looking to the future, where we're going. And so the lookout is able to see the next step to a safer and more prosperous reality, rather than staying behind with the dumpster fire or the ship, going down with the ship. But when it's reversed like this, it's like you're getting dumped out of the crow's nest. So all of these sudden difficult losses can be seen in this way as truly a gift in disguise, and ultimately taking you out of the conflict and setting you free. So it's difficult. It's difficult to either be witness to these, to experience these things. And if you're not in a position like me, for instance, I'm not in a position where I have to worry about necessarily losing my income because of certain mandates, but you can pray for these people and support them with their decisions, and pray for the people who feel like that's what they should do. And everybody's going to make decisions. Boy, oh boy, many people are making decisions based on a lot of different factors. So if you find yourself free from the heat of the battle here, because you decided to let go of something that was going to force you to do something you don't want to do, see that as you've been set free from the conflict in some ways. Not to say it won't come back around to your door. I think that's we're going to be dealing with things all year, but this is really about how that loss of position has really freed us from the battle in some ways, right? Whatever that battle is going to represent. Because what we have to expect here, and this, of course, like I said, this is where our attention is, our conscious awareness, where we're releasing our power and our contribution based on where we're drawing our personal power from. Again, pulling back in at the heart of things with the Hermit, you have to kind of walk away from something in order to get into that introverted space. And you may need a little bit of a push from your guides in order to do so. Or whatever, right? Your own subconscious, or God steps in and gives you this opportunity. I think many of us can point to situations right here, right? The Six of Cups, we can point to situations where God has kind of shoved us out of that, shoved us right out of the crow's nest, and we're like, oh my God, I'm falling. And then you realize like, oh, like the dark night of the soul, as you fall into the abyss, you're like, oh wow, this just made me so much stronger of a person, and I can see now what I'm capable of, and where my true source of harmony really comes from, because it's from within. And based on all of these things, this is a really positive reading, despite how much it is showing that we're going to really need to dig deep, right, in order to acknowledge to ourselves that we are supported and attended to. The universe, right? So you see here, this is the glyph for Saturn right here. This is number 21. 21, 2 plus 1 is 3. So again, we have another 3 as part of this horizontal axis. 3 and 6 and 9. And now we have, again, a 3. So this whole horizontal axis of the manifestation of our consciousness out in the world here is really in this very harmonious numerological pattern right now. So that says a lot to me as well. The universe, right? This is the end of the line. There's a couple connections here. Number one, Neptune is related to this card as the cosmic consciousness. Neptune is in Pisces. Oh boy. Dissolving everything down, so it's nothing but that. Pluto as the central power of creation. Why is that? Because Pluto is the destroyer. And so Pluto represents our ability to create or transform and, to experience metamorphosis as a result of destroying what is old and ready to be let go of, the end of a cycle. So Pluto is involved here too. But this card is really related to Saturn, because Saturn is it represents the completion of the actual physical work, right? The unfolding of the matrix. The physical matrix, the reality that we identify in a material way. So it does represent entirety and completion here. We also find that this represents harmony between the spirit and the body. Oh, there's that 3 again, right? The squaring of the circle. There's the circle of our infinite selves. The square is our material reality that we are our bodies that go around our infinite self of the soul. And what does that do? It is an alchemical reaction, bringing them together. And you have the triangle, the 3 angles surrounding both of those things, right? Harmony between spirit and body. That is ultimately what the pathway of the awakening of humanity is meant to be. We're not going to shoot up into 5D necessarily. It's about living in that state of being while still being in a body, right? That's the work. And this is very I really like this reading, as difficult as some of these things are, because if you are altered in any way at a genetic level, this is going to be really difficult to have this harmony between the spirit and the body, to really fulfill this work and this awakening process, which is to come into a 5D experience while still being in a physical body. And of course, you have to go through 4D. And this is where we talked about yesterday, getting trapped in the lower 4D because you think that is what it means to be spiritual. And it's not. It's just a byproduct of going along your path of awakening and then getting kind of caught up in the power and the ego and the bliss of it as well. That's another part of it. This is why people get addicted to plant medicine and consciousness altering substances, because they get trapped in the lower 4D, not using them for their purpose of it's like it's like the initial it's like the whole operating system gets taken off the device at that point. but it's our job to install one that actually is in line with our spiritual progression and ultimately where we're going. So, but if you keep erasing the operating system over and over and over again, you're not actually doing the work. Or if you get caught in the Ascension program. This is a touchy subject. I don't think I'm quite ready to go down this pathway with people yet, because I'm still working it out for myself. But anyway, the universe, right? Have found our place in life, being at home in ourselves, the harmony between body and spirit. This is ultimately what we are looking at and looking towards as an ultimate goal here. But part of the heart of the matter is, the pulling back and the introversion into ourselves in order to really get to know ourselves. And again, we can reflect back on a past experience where we've gone through a dark night, because there's many, right? It's not like you do it once and then all of a sudden you're awake and then that's it. It's a cycle, just like everything else that we work with. So ultimately where we're going is pretty awesome, and we're getting there, but it's going to come through this sudden, the sudden disruption, being pushed out of the crow's nest, especially if you don't realize there's a ship on fire under you. You definitely will be like, oh my God, I can't believe that this is happening to me. And then later down the line, you're in the water and you're like, I'm going to drown. And then you look over and you're like, oh man, I almost burned alive on the ship. So something to keep in mind, but we're not going to really be able to see that as clearly. Speaking of seeing, I mean, look at this eye here. And again, like the symbolism of Crowley and his artist are certainly steeped in the mystery schools and the secret societies and the one eye Illuminati, all of that stuff, right? It's all in there, which is why, again, that I find I distinctly find some pleasure in undermining their ultimate plan by using their own tools against them. Because they don't own these. They don't own archetypes. They just use them, right? They just use them. They don't create anything. They just manipulate it. Anyway. So let's start looking at some guidance here. So when we talked about ADSM, and I talked about how we can really draw our power not only from acknowledging that we are, supported by spiritual forces and also bringing ourselves into presence, but realizing that we're not alone, that we want to be able to find this community, the Sangha, the spiritual community, whatever that is for us, right? Like-minded people that support each other, like a family, right? You don't get to choose your bio family, but you certainly can choose your spiritual family. And this is really, really important in order to support us. We all have our own personal journey to go through, and nobody can do it for us, but we can be supportive of each other and help this process along the way. And when we see reflections in other people of those spiritual forces that are here for our best interest and who love us and know us, that's powerful. That's really powerful. And when we look at the grouse, this says express yourself through rhythm and movement by drumming and dancing. This is really about how we can find the practices that allow a community or a group or a Sangha to be on the same frequency with each other. You actually have to do things together, right? Dancing together, drumming, right? These are all rhythmic processes that function on a wavelength, right? Rhythm functions like a wavelength, right? Because it is consistent and it oscillates, right? Rhythm. Chanting is the same thing, right? Singing, anything with vibration, but it does what it's saying here, and what we need to think about is that if we want to be on the same wavelength with people, and we want to find that supportive network with each other, and we're struggling, because I really feel like that's a big one right now, is how do I find resonance with people that on the outside I don't seem to resonate with because they have a completely different perspective and agenda. we have to find ways to actually commune with each other in this rhythmic way and give ourselves over to the rhythm. When we do that, then we all start operating on the same frequency. This is how in certain indigenous communities, when they all come together for their ceremony, for instance, this is how they get all on the same wavelength. And then when they're all on the same wavelength, this is where miracles happen. This is how like a rain dance actually functions to bring rain, is because everybody is participating in getting on the same frequency with each other. And once that happens, it's exponentially more powerful. So this is saying that we have to find those practices, whatever they are. And it doesn't have to literally be this. What I'm saying is there are lots of different things that allow us to get into a rhythm with each other and to find some sort of commonality in our frequency and our resonance. So, and we're all together here on Earth. And so it's, how do we do that? Some of us are just going to have to buck up a little bit and initiate and be the bigger person in these situations. It's tempting, like I said, to just be like, you know what? You're on your own, like, good luck. I'm going over here and putting my head down. And that's just, I'm feeling it too. I'm definitely feeling it. It's coming out of my subconscious. I'm definitely seeing it. So I know that this is work we all have to do, whatever it is. And attacking people, right? Attacking people for their beliefs, attacking people for, it's tempting. It really is to be, to be really snide with people too, and be like, oh, congratulations on your future job as a gas chamber attendant or whatever. It's tempting. And sometimes you do need to call people out so that they can wake up. But at the same time, this is really about finding our commonality with each other rather than continue to reinforce division. Now, here's the rattlesnake again. This is the third time now. So again, if you're getting pushed out of the crow's nest or getting dumped out, and God is just like, here, let me help you a little bit. I'm going to dump you out of there. And you're like, oh God, what happened? Again, the experiences that you're presently going through are initiation into fulfilling your purpose as a healer. And as you're a starseed, or even a light worker, because light workers align with the starseed mission, even though they are earth souls, they still are very advanced old earth souls that have gained a lot of wisdom and knowledge over the various incarnations. Except that what's happening, just like if you're suffering, then you are going to be able to have compassion for other people's suffering. And getting pushed out of the crow's nest initially is going to seem like suffering if you are not aware that there is a ship on fire underneath your feet. So again, this is a very important thing that's coming up. The snake is coming up over and over and over. And again, the imagery of the serpent is so convoluted and I feel like is distorted constantly in order to keep us from really knowing the very basic essence of what this symbol represents. But it's about medicine. It's about healing. It's about having access to a power that will heal. And that's why we're seeing it as fulfilling your purpose as a healer. Now, the King of Roses in a reversal like this is also very fascinating. So don't allow yourself to be swept away in the upheaval, right? Sparks may fly when you get dumped out. You may find yourself like getting pissed off, or something happens that's a potential disruption with the masculine in you, in your family or your romantic situation, anything that you have an emotional relationship. The masculine here could get really triggered. Don't allow yourself to be swept away in it, right? We're going to find that the moon is now going to come around and sextile Chiron tomorrow. So we'll talk about that because this is going to be a good opportunity to release this. There's always potential for new beginnings, right? So if you have a disruption, let go. It's time to let go of the attachment to what that is, or that person, or that part of yourself, and to create a truly caring relationship with yourself. It starts there. And you have the power to take control of your perception. We all do. And it's time to take some responsibility for that, right? And so this King of Roses reversed is just kind of reminding us of what the potential is within us, and the masculine that very much cares can be easily triggered by the falling away, the sudden disruption. And so, again, seeing it as a potential for a new beginning within us, right? To cultivate this self-love and this relationship with ourselves. If it starts there, and then it spreads out to your relationship with other people. So, I spent a lot of time on the transmission, or the intuitive part of the transmission, but it's very powerful. Like, I'm really feeling it actually a lot in my heart space right now, in this heart chakra area. So I know that what's coming through is very powerful, and it's very potent, and it also is going to be very challenging, and pulling back in and really getting into the depth of who we are is going to be a big part of this process in order to get here. The end of the line, like the culmination point, the entirety and the completion of the work, whatever that means for us. So let's start looking at, we'll look at the astrology here so that we can, and we're going to look at today and tomorrow so that we can, there we go, because we won't have a transmission tomorrow. So I'm gonna move over here. How you guys doing? Any feedback? How you feeling? Anything? I'm gonna jump over to the chat here real quick and see if anything is going on. I'm just curious how people are feeling and if any of this is resonating. And feel free to leave comments later, social media, all of that stuff. So, all right, guys, here's our astrology for today. So again, we talked about how it's difficult to be kind of at odds with people that seemingly have different agendas, different perceptions. We're all in the same house together, and it's really the house. When you dream about a house, a lot of times it really does represent your own soul, your own you, and everything that encompasses you, who you are. And in some ways you can spread it out a little bit more to like a literal, like, this is everything that's here. But a lot of the times it's you, right? The house is you, and what's in it is what's in your subconscious. So I feel like that the third quarter, or I keep wanting to call it that, the first quarter square, I'm really ahead of myself right now. The first quarter square of the sun and moon that was very late last night, very early this morning, or, in the evening on the West Coast, really was bringing this up, this friction between the part of ourselves that is expressing ourselves through, well, let's all get along and go to the beach together, right? Something that revives all of us by returning to the source of where we came from, right? Which is differently conceptualized for all of us, but if you want to think about it as the ocean, especially because that is the Pisces, that connects to the Pisces archetype, right? The formless, shapeless, boundaryless, field of experience that everything comes from. We want to return to this, and how much that's going to revive us collectively, the social order, because we're talking about Libra. This is a way to find balance, everybody going back to the beginning in some ways, or back to the source, or back to the nurturing of the earth, whatever it is. We want to do this, and we want to all come together. The friction here with the moon in Capricorn, because it's very serious and very rooted in a physical reality, right? Capricorn's ruled by Saturn, is the fact that we need to all work together. And there's a sense of competition. Even when we're working together on a team, we still need something outside of us to kind of motivate the group, right? So you can see where the friction comes in, because it is that seemingly competition on the chessboard that motivates the team to do its best. And it is definitively a relay race, this degree that is squaring the sun. But you can tell that you can feel the tension of like, I want us all to be together, but on the inside you're like, but how are we going to motivate ourselves to get to our goal if not like some opposing force? This is where the Orion starseeds are really, really important, because they are the ones that hold the signature for the ability to do this without making it about them or getting emotionally attached. And so when the moon comes into Aquarius, this will be a little bit easier. As the moon was in Capricorn, very serious, right? And can be very dense. And I feel like that density is really showing itself in a lot of different ways right now, or was. And so last night, what we find here, let's go back to the beginning here. I wouldn't say the beginning, but the beginning of the transits for the 13th. We're finding, number one, that the moon, here's the moon in a sextile to Neptune retrograde in Pisces. And this really is, so we moved past that moment, the square, and it's kind of like, well, when you realize where you've been defeated, right? And not to say that we should give up, but the idea is that you learn more from your failures than you do from your successes. A lot of times, right? And so when you can align with this, if we were able to align with this, right? The sextile, again, remember the sextile, the 60-degree angle, the reconciliation of opposites and open to all directions. When you are able to invest this graceful defeat, as we have been banging our heads against the opposite side, if you want to call it that, for the last how many, this has been happening for a long time politically, obviously, but now it's just been amplified it's been amplified like exponentially in order to really, accelerate some sort of end goal, I would say. If you're able to accept this defeat, if you're able to realize and feel how the collective is able to, whatever team you're on, right? Whatever team that you find yourself on is able to really learn more from the defeat as opposed to winning. And so this investment that we can make from Neptune and Pisces at this point is really very powerful, because Neptune in its retrograde is dissolving within us. Everything down to the most base transcendent direct experience, right? Being submerged in the direct experience, which is not only being brought down to us, but needs to be then applied to our daily life. And Neptune's going to transit out of this degree by tomorrow, and we'll talk about that too, because when these large planets move into new degrees, the shift in their energy is palpable, right? Because they move so slowly through each of these degrees, and each degree is its own archetype. So we're coming to the end of this particular position of Neptune that is really having us have no choice in some ways but to interact with and be submerged in the process of having a direct transcendent experience and a mandate, which is literally the Sabian symbol for this degree, and applying it to our everyday life. It's one thing to get the tablets down from the mountain. It's quite another to follow them. And this is the challenge of this degree. So there's something about the defeat, the graceful defeat, to learn from our mistakes together, to learn from our mistakes together, to then have the whole road open to us, the whole next direction, or the whole next set of directions open to us. So the sextile actually overnight was very much about that. And I feel like that we got kind of bombarded in the last day or so with all of the pitfalls of our competition with each other, the different teams that are put on the chessboard, and realizing that if we lose, quote unquote, lose or defeated, we're not really defeated. We just get to learn how to do it better. And with what we're learning how to do is, what are we learning? We're learning about who we are in the midst of this experience, in this transcendent experience, this direct experience to the infinite source, and the mandate coming down from whatever or whoever we choose to worship. And that's going to make a big difference. And so again, keep in mind that we're not the only ones looking at astrology, and lots of other people are using astrology to guide their hand as well. So again, it all depends on free will and choice in these moments. So then the moon comes into a conjunction after that with Pluto overnight, early this morning. And of course, moon meeting Pluto at any point is the excavation into our more immediate experience of that which is usually repressed and very raw, psychological, deep power, right, in the depths of who we are, having a means to come up to the surface and be experienced. And sometimes this is an eruption, sometimes this is very uncomfortable, and this is facing, since the first time since Pluto went direct. This is the first time the moon has come around and connected here now in a very long time to a direct Pluto. And so we're having a very direct connection to that which is being unraveled and pulled out from under us on a collective and structural level that we've relied upon, and the feelings that go along with it. So you can see how this is related now to the intuitive reading of what we may have to give up, what situations we're faced with that are nudging us out. And in fact, it's a gift, and it allows us to actually develop a whole new set of institutional circumstances and frameworks for us to align with, right? That's really powerful, but it's not an easy position to be in. Pluto is raw and authentic and deep, right? There's no getting around Pluto. You have to go through Pluto in order to spit out the other side of a death and rebirth process. And so not easy, some dark, some deep, some powerful feelings that we are interacting with, but it's allowing us to touch this very transformative, creative power that Pluto represents. It's just not very easy. Now, the moon, and then Venus today is in a sextile to Saturn. You can see that right here. So if we go forward a couple hours here into the morning, we find that Venus is coming into its sextile. The moon is still in Capricorn right now at that point. So we're coming into the afternoon, late morning, early afternoon, into the dinner time over across the pond and beyond. And we find this sextile with Venus in Sagittarius and Saturn now direct in Aquarius. So this is important for two reasons. Number one, well, that's coming later. Never mind. I'm going to talk about that for tomorrow's astrology. It's still important. So this is the emotional rebirth that really inspired the imagery for today's transmission. If you don't know what the image is, it's a fern unfurling. I love ferns. They are a throwback to our original plant ancestors. Ferns still reproduce through spores that are carried along by moisture and water. So they're they're like one of the original connections to plant life coming out of the water, because they reproduce and propagate through water carrying their spores. And so ferns are asexual in the way that they go through, they reproduce through themselves, as opposed to flowers with plants, for instance, are a fairly new evolutionary development. And so the more ancient connections to plant life have to do with them all being asexual and being able to propagate through themselves by creating their own spores, and then the spores carried by water. Anyway, I just love ferns. There's just something about them that I really, really like, and I love watching them unfurl, and I love the process in which they in which they propagate, and they're ancient. They are so ancient, and I really love that. So anyway, but that does the rebirth process, the emotional rebirth that comes about, really stimulated and inspired that image. And so this is where Venus is right now, and it's the stirring up of our own longings for this love that brings about emotional rebirth. And there is something about this. It's like it's a subjective event that tends to bring emotional chaos. So we're talking about Venus here. So we're talking about something very directly connected to the value we find in our life right now. So our resources, our relationships, the projects we're working on that mean something to us, that which provides symmetry and aesthetic beauty and balance and peace of mind and comfort and security. You know, that is what Venus, and we've talked a lot about Venus and the dark side of Venus, the object of our desire, right? Pulling towards us what we want, right? Regardless of how it impacts anybody else. And so Venus, we're going to find this subjective event in a connection to Saturn today, an event that tends to bring emotional chaos, because it's really a projection of either our anima or animus onto some sort of, and when we're talking about Venus, it's going to be very physical, very material, very in the physical world, and that can mean people and relationships and their value to us. So we see this knocking at the door, right? This potential for emotional rebirth that comes out of some sort of subjective event that is really brought about by our own internal stirring, right? And brought and exalting some sort of individual characteristic that we're projecting out. Now, the sextile to Saturn today with this is, again, that reconciliation of opposites, because in Aquarius, it's moving forward now. So the emotional rebirth is really being the investment of the cosmic egg breaking open and what's coming out is really, we can invest these two aspects into each other. Whereas we are having a very subjective event that brings emotional chaos that is brought about by our own stirring, emotional rebirth, something coming forward as a result of our own inner desire coming forward, that is applicable and can be invested into Saturn, which is a very distinct new aspect coming forward, breaking out of the egg. And so we can kind of bring it forward, and specifically we're projecting onto that situation what it is that has stirred us in terms of love and longing, right? And so this emotional rebirth is definitely coming about today, and we will project onto what's coming out of that egg based on the paradigm that we are operating under, because that is what Sagittarius really represents, is the collective belief systems, the paradigms, the big picture that Sagittarius represents, the understanding that we're operating under is going to be kind of the bedrock here, or certainly the foundation of what is projected out onto what Saturn is, representing in Aquarius, which is this cosmic egg. So this is very interesting, what's going to come forward. I'm very curious and a little unnerved by the whole thing. I'll tell you that much. So in a good way, right? We kind of just at this point, we have to just start accepting and being very true and authentic to ourselves of what, nothing can stop what is coming, right? So let's see here. One thing also I want to mention is that Black Moon Lilith is now stationing direct, and so and we'll meet Uranus between today and tomorrow, and so there's also that deep self-preservation, that deep dark feminine part of ourselves, the unconscious drives in for survival and preservation is deep within us and is now starting to move direct, and so we'll start acting on those things, I think, and start to really put them into a context that's outside of us as she is moving direct, and she's going to meet Uranus. So Again, that means she's in Taurus, so it is about the physical world, material world, our currency, our bodily autonomy, what's valuable to us. These are things that are going to start coming up to the surface in a way that has to do with self-preservation and a very deep longing to be free. Right. So then as the moon moves into Aquarius, as you can see here, right after this sextile is exact, right? The moon moves into Aquarius, and the first connection that it really makes is a trine to her own north node right over here, so Rahu. And at the same time, of course, is going to be in a sextile to the south node over here in Sagittarius. But let's look at this trine because there is something very important about this degree of Aquarius, because it ultimately represents the repudiation, crucial repudiation, not my words, this is the words from the Sabian symbol that Dane Rudyard had written, crucial repudiation of a collective status which has become unbearable. And in a trine to the north node, what it's suggesting is this refusal to accept the type of cultural patterns that we are part of that are unbearable, that we have identified individually as unbearable. Very much finding support and a foundational support, right? And a lot of traction with where we are being led at a soul level in order to evolve, which is very much about just coming to some sort of structural formalism with information, right? We're not synthesizing it. There's no understanding that's going along with it. In 3 degrees Gemini, it's truly just taking the mental forms and putting them into a structure that is balanced. And, the two, oh boy, the first decan of Gemini is the 8 of Swords, which is very interesting to me. Is Jupiter in Gemini is the first Jupiter in the first decan, the first 10 degrees, and it's the tendency to be kind of overwhelmed by all of the ideas. So there's this moment here where it's all put together. And within us, there's a realization, a self-realization of how important it is to refuse and to desert that which has become unbearable at a collective level. And the Sabian symbol is very interesting. A deserter from the Navy. Do you notice that there's a lot of the military whistleblowers come from the Navy? Do you ever realize that? Bill Cooper, whistleblower from the Navy. Tori says, whistleblower from Navy intelligence. The Navy seems to have access to a lot. Not all of them, obviously. There are other military whistleblowers that come from other branches, obviously. But there's something about the Navy, and this is brought up in the moon sign, 3 degrees Aquarius, right? Because the Navy represents the military branch of the military that has to do with the water and the seas and the Coast Guard too. But the Navy seems to be really the master of this realm. And of course, Aquarius is the water bearer. So there's something very important here about, and very structurally supportive of where we're being drawn on a level intellectually and at a soul level that has to do with our realization of what is unbearable and our responsibility in some ways to to refuse to accept these cultural patterns. It's in fact very much connected to where we are going and finding a lot of traction with where our soul's being pulled in terms of knowledge, right? In terms of knowledge. And information and empirical data and reason, because those are all the things that Gemini represents. And then the last thing that I want to talk about in terms of today is that the sun is going to come into a quincunx with Neptune retrograde right before it moves back into the next degree. And so again, this is something that came up when Mercury was stationing retrograde not that long ago, because it was up here at the same degree. How do we transmute ourselves with these two seemingly unfitting experiences, where on the one hand we just want to give to those who are thirsty for for life, right? And it's a very simplistic thing, right? It's like children giving birds a drink at a fountain. It's like, here, let me fill the fountain for you, little birdies, and you don't have to go searching for it. I'm just going to bring it here for you, right? We really, and this is where the real, I think the real struggle comes in terms of our relationship with others, right? And how we make sense of this and how we're going to deal with this, because it's in this quincunx right here that is going to be where we adjust ourselves. Because again, the mandate's coming down from the mountain, and depending on who it is that you put your worship into is going to make a big difference in how you apply that mandate to your life. But let's just, for the sake of argument, I guess, or the sake of who's, here, that we're taking the mandate from the ultimate source, right? And it's from within us. And so while we, on some level, each individually want to express ourselves and to find our expression through this very, very gentle, very simple, and very, very mindful adjustment, to give to those who are thirsting for it, we still have to adjust ourselves in the sense of what is it that we're giving, right? We're giving birds, for instance, right, drink from the fountain, or bringing them water, right? It's a child bringing water to the birds. But what water? Where's the water coming from? Where is it coming from? Is it salt water? Is it drinkable? Is it potable, right? Is it actually the right water to be bringing, right? Where is it coming from? I think that these questions are important in order to transmute this energy that is seemingly not going to fit, because we're applying this to our everyday life. Whereas this has a lot more to do with balancing the social order in our relationships. And that's not always, it's not always doable. And this is where we're really struggling. It's like, how do we come together with those that are completely not on our level, whatever that is? And that goes regardless, right? That doesn't matter where you're at right now. What matters is that we have to acknowledge that if we don't come together and we don't find a resonance that we can all come together, within, that we are in trouble, or at least it's going to be a very, very bumpy ride through this process. So this quincunx by the end of today into tomorrow, as you can see, it's like in the crossover point to tomorrow is very, it's going to have us asking some questions. And I feel like that's going to really start to unfold again in the dream state. As you can see, this is happening, very late tonight into the morning. So pay attention to the dream state. Of course, the moon is in Aquarius, so it's allowing us to kind of have this detachment from being in the emotions and being a little bit aloof emotionally to be able to feel into the whole of the social organism. And that can really help too with, helping with this transmutation here, this quincunx of things that don't seem to fit together. So let's move on to the 14th while we're here, and just talk about these transits. So the moon is going to make a connection. It's going to meet Saturn, right? And so again, we're going to have a very direct, emotional, intuitive, subconscious connection to what is emerging from this cosmic egg that is unavoidable, right? That is going to give that in itself is a new structure. It's a new framework. It's a new set of social institutions. It's a new humanity in some ways. And at the very same time, right after that, it's going to meet that, and then the moon will then come into that sextile with Venus, just like Venus did with Saturn the day today, right? And so then we get to make a much more direct connection, a much more subconscious and intuitive connection to Venus. And at this point, this is going to be, we're going to be feeling into we get to see the preformed mental archetypes of where we could go. They're not the actual representations. They're just preformed mental archetypes, and applying what is forming under the surface in terms of our relationships and our value, right? New elements being formed under in the depths of the fire, of the catalytic fire. So on the one hand, with Venus, that we're projecting out in this emotional rebirth, and then we start to really connect deeply within ourselves about what new aspect is being formed, because the rebirth is kind of like making space for something. And so the sextile here, this moon, the moon and Venus in the sextile, again, the reconciliation of opposites, the ability to harmonize and move in any direction as a result of this moment of harmony that we find because we invest this energy in each other. So there's new aspects being formed under the surface of our relationships, of what's valuable to us, that is forming as a result of this longing and emotional rebirth that's come about today. And we can invest that into, bringing about what is really merely like a wax figure into something real in the future. And like in developing, it's like connecting the template energetically to where Venus is based on our mental concept of what we want to align with in terms of the emergence of a new humanity. And then we can apply that and invest that into Venus that has all of these it's like psychic gestation right now. So we can apply the template to what that psychic gestation is doing, and then we'll be able to actually bring it about as Venus moves through her transit. Because we're going to find that Venus is going to meet Antares tomorrow. So the moon then comes into a sextile with Chiron. And I know that this is a long one. It's just because we're not going to be together tomorrow. So I want to make sure I really touch on this stuff so that we can have a clear view of what's going on. 10 degrees here, 10 to 11 degrees, the moon in Aquarius and the moon or Chiron in Aries, right? And so this is where the silent hour, the receiving of inspiration from the hermit mode that is really being showcased right now at the heart of the matter, is where we're going to get the new inspiration for how that will change our life, that can change our life. And again, it's during the silence, it's during that stillness, it's during the introversion away from everything that we can apply to Chiron's transit during Aries right now, that is really having us like pull our ego into the center of everything right now, as if it's the only thing that matters, as a defense mechanism and as a way to bypass our own healing. So we can really, again, it's the same, all these sextiles, right? All of these opportunities to reconcile and then go in a new direction as a result of our investment in these opposites into each other. The silence, right? The silence and the going within and the introversion, rather than continuing to press outward, is allowing us to find a new inspiration that can allow us to heal this wound, right? It's not to say that we shouldn't have a collectively centralized ego in our subjective experience, but what it's doing right now is keeping us from actually connecting to other people, or to even acknowledge that anything exists outside of ourselves. And we're going to have to, that's just, we have to be realistic about that. So with the moon moving through Aquarius and making this connection, there's another opportunity, right? Another opportunity to do this inner work, and another opportunity to be inspired about what direction to take as well in terms of the whole social organism, because that's what Aquarius is really talking about. Then the moon comes in right after that, comes into a trine with Mercury. Mercury retrograde soon it's going to start slowing down, because by next week, which is on the 18th, Monday the 18th, this is when Mercury and Jupiter station direct. Okay, so right now, the trine with the Aquarian moon to Mercury retrograde right now is realizing that we may all be on different levels. We all may be on a different part of this staircase, but we are all on the staircase together, and we're all equal in the eyes of God. So on this staircase. And so this allows us to turn, the lens is turned inward already. So the mental sphere and the mental activity can really show us how deep into the rabbit hole we're willing to go, and how important it is that we come back out so that we don't get lost, and we don't get lost in the idea that, we're somehow not all going to the same place together. The moon in Aquarius is showing us at this moment here that we're all going to the same place together, right? There's nothing that can stop what's coming. There's one outcome here at the event horizon. We're all going into the black hole, into the singularity, whatever that is. It's how we go in there is going to determine where we pop out on the other side. And we can't be aware of that larger context if we stay down in the coal mine, right? We have to go down into the rabbit hole. That's important, but it's also just as important that we're coming back up for air. And Mercury retrograde in this position is showing us that we can't go to the same place together if we don't come up for air, if we stay down in the deep coal mine. It's important that we're acknowledging this, that we have to come back out as much as we need to go back in. And everybody's got their job and their role as well. And that's part of the moon and Aquarius connection here. So these two things are really, again, the trine is finding a lot of traction. They're supporting each other structurally in this moment in terms of our minds and our application of our knowledge as well. This is incredible. We're going to be learning a lot over the next day or so. Where are we? Sorry here, guys. No, I was in the right place. Chiron, Mercury, and then comes around to square Uranus. Oh boy. And here we go, squaring Uranus. So the moon is in a square to Uranus. Aquarius is the home territory of Uranus. The moon is exalted in Taurus. We've talked about this before. Every time it comes back around, it's this opportunity. It's not a mutual reception, like, technically, but it's close, right? Because both of these objects are in territory that the other is familiar with. So they can really assist each other in this square because it's fixed energy, fixed earth and fixed air. And so when they meet each other, it's very like a stubborn, staunch connection. But the fact that they are in each other's familiar territory, at least, allows us to really learn something from the other in this square instead of just stubbornly just butting heads in this situation. So what does this mean? So the moon is talking about how we can, expedite our evolution through the use of our knowledge and our skill and our mental acuity and our physical discipline, right? Being able to literally tunnel through a train entering a tunnel. This is like a wormhole, right? This is like a Stargate. This is like, it is like these portals, right? That we have to actually use our mind and our higher mind in order to do so. And the square is reminding us that the actual collective portal or the collective Stargate or the collective wormhole, which is Uranus in a lot of ways, within us is really about our ability to be revitalized by the natural world, our connection back to a more innocent and almost unconscious state of being where we're just in communion with the natural world and with the natural process. And so, but at the same time, the moon, it's like we can each, even though it's in a square, right? Even though it's cross purposes, because on the one hand, we want to take ourselves through this wormhole, through our own subconscious, through our own feelings, right? We want to tunnel through with the use of our ability to harness the collective energy, right? The Aquarian energy. But what we have to learn here is that it's the revitalization and the connection to the natural world that within ourselves that's really the true wormhole. That's really the true Stargate and the true portal. But at the same time, there's a familiarity here. Like the square isn't actually going to be as tense as it could be because there's familiarity on both sides of it. that we do have to allow ourselves some sort of, we need some urge or desire to even go through it, right? And that's what the moon really represents, our urge and our desire, and like a feeling, right? That's a feeling that drives us. So we have to allow ourselves to even feel motivated and driven in the first place to go through this tunnel, or this wormhole, or this awakening process. It's the friction here can be alleviated when these two aspects can find a commonality with each other. Oh, that sounds really familiar, doesn't it? In terms of what we are doing on a social level right now, about being able to simultaneously awaken together, but also to not let go of our physical, the very physical, natural, palpable world, and reconnecting to that. And that has to do with relationships, right? Because Venus does rule Taurus. So our relationships and how they make us feel and what their value is in our life, and what kind of beauty and harmony they bring to our lives is important to recognize here. We can't get through this tunnel on our intellect alone. We're gonna have to give ourselves over to a certain extent to the natural world and the natural process if we really want to make it through. And I'm not suggesting that this, right? This is really what certain agendas are working against, right? How do we upgrade ourselves to some sort of AI conglomeration that will allow for this? And that's your choice if you want to do that. That's where you'll pop out on the other side of this event horizon, is if that's where you're going. But in the meantime, we can't let go of the actual, we have to give ourselves over to a certain extent to the natural world, because we are in fact inseparable from it. And so if we really want to wake up collectively, if we really want to find our way through this portal or this event horizon and spit out the other side, and do it successfully, part of that is, or most of that is really going to be about reconnecting. And this is what I work with my clients with very directly, how important it is to connect to the physical, energetic grid of the planet, right? We have our own grid. We have our own toroidal field. We have to connect to the planets if we're really going to have any hope of successfully popping out the other side of this process intact, and naturally intact. That's important to realize. And that's the pathway of the awakening within all of us, is the natural process of this. So awakening is a natural process. It's being rendered unnatural in some ways for whatever reason. So guys, I'm going to leave it here. That's a lot of information, and I really appreciate you sticking by and being part of it. Like I said, we won't have a transmission tomorrow. We'll be back for the full moon astrology and the weekly astrology on Friday, because we do have our full moon. We have our full moon on the 20th. And on the 18th is when Mercury and Jupiter both station direct. And so there's a lot on the horizon here. And right now is our opportunity to really get pulled into ourselves, take the opportunity to go within and really understand our place in the whole thing, in order to then we can find who we align with. We can find who we already resonate with, and we can find support in that situation. And we can also resonate louder and stronger to attract other people who are also in their own process of waking up, whatever that is. And that's usually going to be that shove out of the crow's nest. That's just like, oh no, I'm losing everything. And it's like, oh wait, that was all holding me down. Now I can actually be myself and, come into communion with something way more beautiful and wonderful than what I thought was reality. So I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you're interested in learning how it ends for you, meaning 2021, you can book the How Does It End reading. It is $99 right now. I have a flyer on my social media. I also send it out through email. If you're on my email list, I will post it again so that you can see it in case you missed it. $99. We look at your astrology from the full moon of October all the way up to the end of 2021 and see what areas of your life. So far, star seeds that I've been working with, they all have really strong connections to the solar eclipse that's happening December. And so it's important to see how I think it's really important to know what areas of your life are going to be impacted by the upcoming eclipse season, because it's going to be a big deal. Going to be a very big deal. So this time period right now, of course, is about getting ourselves like up to speed, so to speak, with not being flung around by the oscillation of time and space right now that seems to be increasing, because once November and December hit, it's going to be a totally different ball game. And eclipse season is going to, the beginning of eclipse season is, well, let's go Brandon, right? And I'm not suggesting that should happen or shouldn't happen. I'm not excited for it. I'm not dreading it. I have no opinion about it. It's really just a forecast for the Wicker Man that is so aligned with the full moon lunar eclipse. And full moon lunar eclipses are prime time for Wicker Man type of stuff. So I'm not trying to call it into existence. I'm just forecasting what potentially could be brought about as a result of what I'm seeing in the astrology and how it relates to certain people. And you can kind of see how things have progressed over, time to lead up to a point where that type of event may be accepted and almost reinforced energetically by those who don't think that they're reinforcing a certain agenda, right? So just some things to think about. That's all. They're just things to think about. If you need any more things to think about. So, you can follow Catalyst Energies on social media, linked in the description box below. You can get to the website, also linked in the description box below. And if you are interested in that reading and you don't need to look at the flyer, you can email me directly and put in the subject line, I want to know how it ends, or something to that effect, and we will get you on the schedule. So I am pretty booked in terms of the rest of this week, and into next week is getting booked as well. So if you want to get that reading soon, now's the time to reach out and get it on the books with me. So I love you guys. Thanks for everything and being part of this journey for all of us. And I'll see you on Friday morning. Have a great day. Enjoy today. Enjoy Thursday. Take care of yourself. Do the work that you need to do, and reach out if you need support or if you have any questions, and I will do my best to assist you. I love you guys. I'll see you on Friday.